color. But seriously, behind the amusement, of course, there is a sort of horror. Looking at how this government simply dissolves before your very eyes, how it just sort of falls to pieces. There is the point where this bit of schadenfreude that I mentioned earlier comes in, that many people saw on the European side, saw this Boris Johnson's government as sort of an outpost of Donald Trump in the United Kingdom, very populist, trying to please everybody, not being very straight with the truth, bending things to your will. And of course, now they see that this is spectacularly failing. And so everybody thinks, okay, good, that is done with. We hope for somebody better, more serious, as my French colleague said, more really prone to do his job, to sort of deal with inflation, deal with rising prices and all the other problems that all European countries have, and not just sort of clowning about and holding fun speeches or silly speeches in public. It really is a mix. But the weight is probably on a sort of everyone will be relieved in the end when this experiment with populism is over.
You're both obviously trying to look to a British Prime Minister who might have a different relationship with Europe. But it's interesting when you look at British politics here, you'll see that the main opposition party leader, Sir Keir Starmer from the Labour Party, gave a speech recently in which he ruled out any attempt to rejoin the single market or the European Union, and that if there is to be a leadership contest among the ruling Conservative Party, from what we understand, everyone will roughly continue the same policy of Boris Johnson, Marie Billon. There is no particular conversation here about changing that relationship with Europe, which was changed through Brexit.
No, indeed, because it's something that's so touchy in terms of the UK electorate that all the politicians really are not really clear in terms of what they can do with the other countries. So no, there might not be a lot of change in terms of the policy, but the relationships are very important, all the more important now that the UK is out of the EU. Being friends, and not just saying our friends in the EU, as Boris Johnson says, being really friends with members of the EU, makes that, for example, when there's a meeting of the Home Secretaries in Calais, like a few months ago, you are invited as a non-member of the EU, but you're invited because you count, you're important, and you're not disinvited because you did something wrong, which is what happened, of course, after Boris Johnson sent a letter to Emmanuel Macron saying, we have to sort out the Channel crossing. Why don't you take back some of the people who crossed the Channel, and put that letter on Twitter? That's when Emmanuel Macron said that Boris Johnson wasn't serious. And as a result, France disinvited Priti Patel to the meeting. That was very important because it was an important meeting, and nothing can be decided without the UK because they are so important when you talk about Channel crossing. So that's why it's important to have good relationship, good human relationship, and some kind of trust, even if the parties are different. Community is important, and the UK being outside, it's all the more important that you tie new relationships with those countries.
And one of the challenges facing all EU countries and Britain, which is not part of the EU, is policy towards Ukraine. Boris Johnson has in recent months made visible support for Ukraine a central part of his premiership. Barbara Weissel, how important has Britain's Ukraine policy been in influencing Germany, if at all?
It has been important in the way that it has been noted, and everybody was more or less secretly grateful that it was there because it was quite early. I mean, Britain was one of the countries delivering weapons to Ukraine earlier than others, and Germany has forever been dithering around, being caught up in historical problems of self-awareness and pacifism and whatnot. Yes, there is, of course, the acknowledgement that they say, yes, he has done this, he is doing this, and that is a good point. As for the rest, I mean, it doesn't end there. It ends at the point where we are at in Europe with our economies in trouble, with our electorate, our voters, our citizens more or less becoming restive and nervous and uncertain about what the future will bring. And with regard to those measures and policies and maybe things countries in Europe could do in common, there has been absolutely no support or a sort of no answer from Boris Johnson what we could do. Is there anything that Europe should do, for instance, with regard to energy prices and so on? And so that is totally lacking. And it's just this one exception that is the political support for Ukraine. That is something that will be his legacy, and everyone will be hoping that his successor will continue with that. But as for the rest, as Marie very rightly said, it's up to personal relationship. Trust needs to be restored. There needs to be decency and honesty in the way of dealing with each other. I mean, the European countries aren't waiting for Britain to come back. That is simply not on the agenda. But they are a way to deal with a neighbor in a straightforward manner and in a way that we can all trust each other.
Barbara Weissel, the senior Europe correspondent for Deutsche Welle in Belgium, and Marie Billon, the UK correspondent for the radio station RTL in France. Boris Johnson says he intends to stay on as an outgoing caretaker Prime Minister until the next leader is chosen, which may not happen until October or so. Not everyone is happy about this delay. We'll hear now from two more Conservative voters. Vicky is a long-time Tory voter who lives in Bristol in southwest England. She never backed Boris Johnson as leader. And Will lives in Audenshaw in Manchester in northwest England. He voted for Boris Johnson in 2019, the first time he'd voted for the Conservatives, and he's not happy that Johnson is now stepping down as Prime Minister.
There's nobody to lead. And even if you look across the ballot box, and I know people are going on about Labour, and I'm a Labour man. I was a Labour man I'm 58 years of age, so my first vote was 18. So you're looking nearly 40 years, say 37 years. And you look across the ballot box, and Sir Keir Starmer is a rabbit in the headlights.
The opposition leader, the Labour leader.
Yeah, and it's worrying. I mean, Boris did what he said he was going to do, but what happened is he's COVID it, and the end of his tenure has been shocking. And it's a shame because he was probably going to go down as one of the great leaders, but now he's gone down as a shame for the Conservative voters around the world. The country's in a mess. So let's forget Partygate and stuff. There's a lot of major political issues out there, and there's also the cost of living crisis.
Vicky, how do you see things?
I'm absolutely delighted that he's left. It's not a moment too soon for me. I wasn't happy when he was elected, to be honest, because I could see the writing on the wall. I don't think he was ever right to lead the party and be Prime Minister. And I'm glad that he's finally, for once, done the right thing.
Vicky, what are the main issues facing you in your life?
I run a business, and that has been quite tricky during COVID, I have to admit. So cost of living crisis is actually a consideration, and getting a business back up and running as it was prior to COVID. But also, I want to be represented by a cabinet and MPs that I feel understand what's going on, not just with me, but with the rest of the country as well. So it's representative of the electorate.
Will, what are the main issues facing you in your life? You talked about the cost of living.
Well, unfortunately for me, I was finished work on ill health in April. So the cost of living crisis has come as a bit of a shock when I'm on £750 a month. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of worse people out there. But when you're talking people are spending £30 if they're going 50 miles to work and then 50 miles back, you're talking £30 a day. I don't know how people are doing it.
Vicky, do you expect a new government to change your life, to make it easier to buy things when you go shopping?
I actually do have some level of confidence because I think that it's needed so much that they have no choice but to actually have a strategy in place. And I'm really hoping that when we stop talking about some of the scandals and lies that were floating around and some of the dreadful behaviour, that actually we will have a cabinet that are able to focus on the things that matter, which has been part of the problem. And I do hope there is a Prime Minister and a cabinet surrounding that Prime Minister that has a much stronger moral compass than Boris Johnson had, which wouldn't be difficult.
They need to sort the Brexit deal out properly with the Northern Ireland thing, and they also need to do the illegal immigration. I think there's some major issues there, and the cost of living crisis is obviously, it's everybody, not just one person in the UK and worldwide. We do need a government, a very strong government and a very strong leader, because otherwise this situation is going to get worse.
Will in Manchester and Vicky in Bristol after a tumultuous week here in the UK, where the Prime Minister, after leading his party to an unprecedented victory just 3 years ago, now says that he will resign. I'm James Reynolds, and this has been BBC OS Conversations on Boris Johnson.
Thank you for listening. There will be more from the documentary podcast soon. The documentary is just one of our podcasts. There are many others to choose from.
I remember crossing the finishing line and my heart going, I think I've just won.
That is a significant moment when you first win a medal at Olympic Games.
On the Podium, the podcast where Olympic and Paralympic athletes share their remarkable personal journeys from their struggles.
When I went from 80% to 2% vision, my life was just a wreck.
It's not just an injury, it's having an injury 20 days before your dream.
How can I use this pain and this energy?
You just kind of gotta push through it and make the best of it.
To their victories.
We won 7 medals in Olympics and 19 medals in Paralympics. This will change the Indian sport.
On the Podium from the BBC World Service.
We're ready to go. We're ready to have fun. We're ready to party.
Search for On the Podium wherever you found this podcast.
At Centra, we appreciate the power of choice. We know that ultimately choices define us. For example, attitude is a choice. Positivity, kindness, respect, all choices. Supporting your community, that's a choice too, and a really positive one at that. That's why every day our retailers choose community and are helping to contribute to a more vibrant Ireland for today and tomorrow. Choices define us. Choose wisely. Choose to live every day. Centra. Live every day.